They arrive to the Mountain of Woe, and we hear another Romancing Saga 3 track as the backdrop, also performed in Trigger style. This time, it's the track Leonid's Castle. It sort of gives Mountain of Woe this bone-chilling vibe, where the time is winding down. I must say, it's a little weird to see Melchior being pushed around by Magus, but that'll make a bit more sense in a few moments. Now this is a pretty interesting dungeon in the game, since you not only fight enemies as usual, but you also have to make decisions and movements to ensure that Melchior doesn't get hit by an enemy. If he gets hit 3 times, he dies, and it's game over for real. And these decisions all happen outside of a normal battle, since Melchior runs off whenever a proper battle starts. For example, when you approach this side of the mountain you must climb, if you make Melchior climb first, he gets pelted by this Bantam imp. So Magus needs to climb first if you want to ensure that Melchior lives. On the second level of the mountain, you can find a not-so-secret passageway that leads you to a second hidden obelisk. If you immediately go for the first treasure chest on this level, Melchior will also get pelted by another Bantam imp. Although you do get a full ether, so might be worth the hit. On the same level, you also need to walk a certain path at times, and not let Melchior fall too far behind, or else he'll get slammed by more Bantam imps and the odd rubble. There's a few chests on the Mountain of Woe where you can stock up on mid-tonics and mid-ethers, and win tonics and mid-tonics in battle. All the enemies, like the man-eaters, monks, and rubbles, are all weakest against attacks, and generally strong against all magic. The rubbles can be tricky to defeat, just like in Chrono Trigger. They don't give you any tech points, but they do give you 2,000 experience points if you're interested in clearing the game with the most experience you can possibly gain. So if you make it to the top, Melchior starts to get all serious. He let himself be pushed around so that he could take a literal stab at the Prophet without distraction, with the Proto-Masamune ruby knife no less. Magus immediately recognizes the sword's embryonic form, yet is surprised that it originated in Zeal. I guess he never got close enough to the sword to see that Melchior's own name was engraved on it. Then a super cool fight ensues, one of my favorite moments in the game for sure. I mean, that illusory shadow move is absolutely something else. Magus freezes Melchior, with knife in hand, and leaves. We know that Chrono in the game eventually free Melchior, and plunge the ruby knife into the Mammon machine. However, I often wonder if the ruby knife was plunged into the Mammon machine in the original timeline, and if so, who did it? I'll save this topic for the end of the video as well. Upon reaching the foot of the Mountain of Woe, Magus finds Shala waiting. She was likely already still in El Gedi, visiting the newborn Earthbound baby, but she was also gravely concerned about Melchior's fate. She says he had valid points, was essential to Zeal, and that the gargantuan beast that guards the mountain's peak, Giga Gaia, devours all who are chained there. I think that Giga Gaia is a dream being that's infused into the mountain, in the same way that Maza and Mune are infused into the Masamune, to ensure that a particular will is integrated into its housing material. This is bolstered by the fact that once Chrono and the gang defeat Giga Gaia, the floating mountain breaks its chain, crumbles, and sinks into the surrounding ocean. As a side note, I also think that the Mountain of Woe might have been a prototype or first surviving try at the floating lands of Zeal, hence its low floating and training wheel chain. Anyways, Magus assures Shala that he put Melchior in an ice stasis that will protect him from harm. I suppose this means he does have some mercy, or that destroying him would be overkill, since he simply wanted him out of the way, or that killing him would create a plot paradox, something like that. Midway through this exchange, we are treated to the lovely Radical Dreamers track Far Promise Dream Shore, one of my favorite Chrono Series tracks. This banishing of Melchior seems to have broken her spell of faith a bit. She questions why she's confiding in the Prophet, but do I really have to say it? Magus offers her some reassuring words and quickly departs. It's a brief interaction by necessity, but the choice of track underpins what we all want to see, that Magus found her again, even if for a brief moment. Besides, completing this dungeon also gives Magus a reward in the form of the magic wall tech, which will certainly come in handy later on. There's a quick flash to Chrono and the gang, discovering the fresh ruins of Laruba, and we're back to Zeal. A nearby guard tells Magus about some heavy construction taking place in the Ocean Palace, and that Dalton is making the Earthbound slaves work twice as hard, especially since the original mastermind of the palace, Belthasar, has disappeared. Upon leaving Zeal Palace, the game gives you a huge hint on where to go next, in the form of a twinkling glow above Cerulean Lake. I guess we'll head there. Well, the NPCs still say the same things, but as Magus moves towards the clearing in the north, he quickly gets ambushed by a gang of News. Their master Belthasar sent them on an errand to learn more about the Prophet. And what better way to learn more about someone than by fighting them? Now, this is a fight that is either extremely difficult or extremely easy. There's no in between. The key here is to make sure you kill a particular New before the rest. All of the News will either knock your health down to 1 HP or deal 0 damage, except for one pesky one that will also hit you with 1 HP damage when you just so happen to have 1 HP left. Defeat that one first, and this battle will be a cakewalk. Plus, you'll get a tonic for all your efforts. Magus interrogates the last surviving New. He learns that Gaspar and Belthasar have already fled Zeal. It sounds like when Belthasar passed Magus earlier, he felt the black wind surrounding him, and learned through the wildfire gossip that Magus's presence hastened the activation of the Mammon machine. I also think that maybe Belthasar and Gaspar felt less of a duty to stop Lavos in comparison to Melchior, for reasons which I had explained before. The New calls Magus Death's Harbinger, which Magus scoffs at. The New leaves and drops an elixir. Not bad. So, with the knowledge that all 3 gurus are out of the way, he decides to make his way to the Ocean Palace, with a quick stop at Zeal Palace in between to see the Queen. Meanwhile, at Zeal Palace, the Queen informs Dalton that she has decided to have the Prophet lead the completion of the Ocean Palace instead of him, and that Dalton is better suited to guard duty. Ouch. Dalton whines that, after Belthasar, he should be the rightful director of the project. She responds by saying that Dalton spends most of his time whining, while the Prophet simply gets shit done, which is brutally true and goddamn hilarious. Magus returns to Zeal Palace, where the Queen lets Magus know about this trusted role she's given him, much to Magus's surprise. As the Queen leaves the Mammon machine room, Dalton hints at some damage within the Ocean Palace that he was planning on repairing, but will leave for Magus to clean up, especially since it will cause him some degree of havoc in the form of contaminations and unruly monsters. Without speaking a word, Magus takes the nearby portal straight into the depths of the Ocean Palace. If I recall correctly, running this ROM on an emulator that is not ZSNES will cause a game-stopping glitch at this point, so again, be forewarned.